Welcome back to Exhausted Sparrows Unite, the podcast where we take on life's toughest moments, break them apart, and rebuild them. Last week, you might have tuned in where me and my friend, Radio Tom, as I like to call Tom Morell, dove into reframing our thoughts, finding some courage to see things differently, and rewriting the whole narrative that holds us back. But let's be real, Tom. Reframing is easier said than done. And what happens when those thoughts take on a life of their own? Then what do? What happens when we spiral, when we're in this endless loop of what-ifs and should-haves? Well, that's the world of overthinking. It's a place in our minds that we're trying to just solve everything, but often we're just paralyzed. Overthinking clouds our judgment, it feeds our anxiety, it drains us, and oh my gosh, do I not deal with that every day? We're going to take a look today into the deeper meaning of what it is and why it happens and how it's connected to anxiety and why Tom and I were like, we need to do this podcast.
Oh, for sure. Because as soon as you said, hey, this is the topic, I was like, already on it. I'm already there. I'm already doing
38 minutes later, Tom is like, I'm ready. Let's go. I've got all my information, meaning myself.
Yeah. Because, I mean, the topic is overthinking today and the anxiety that it causes. Right. And, I mean, first, let's talk about what overthinking is. This may be an oversimplification of it. People probably already know what this is, but it's replaying ideas or thoughts or situations that have happened or haven't happened yet. It's running those scenarios. I like to think of it as like war gaming, right? Like, what's the next move? It's like chess. There's 8 moves ahead, 20 moves ahead, 30 moves ahead. What is this going to create? But it happens simultaneously. I don't know if you could, if people aren't overthinkers, they don't understand what this is, but like, it's having every possible scenario play out in your brain over and over and over again all day long, and it's exhausting.
It's
we're gonna so exhausting.
We're gonna get into all of that, but it's like this. You talked about it last week, so I think it's really interesting to bring it up this week because I'm realizing it is just kind of embedded in us. It is this fight or flight response, right?
It's a defense mechanism.
To protect us.
Yeah.
And we talked about how in ancient times, I mean, that was great. I mean, you had predators and you had life-threatening things, but I mean, we're using it now like with situations with our friends. And the problem with it is that it's supposed to be short-lived. It's supposed to be like, there's a bear, get up the tree.
Yeah, A or B.
Right. But we take it and then we draw it out, as you're saying, into the 28 chess moves.
Well, because it becomes A and then A1 or A2, or it's A2B, A2B6. Like there's moves upon moves upon moves upon moves.
And this is my life. And this is why I'm laughing, because Tom and I, like every day, we talk and we're like, so what did you overthink today?
Yeah. The first question is, am I overthinking this? And the answer is always, yeah, you're overthinking this.
So I'm going to say this, Tom. I'm sorry. I hope I'm not embarrassing you. But even before we got on this podcast, right before I hit record, he goes, all right, I'm a man. I like to fix things. So should I not say any of the fixes? And he's like, because then will people think? I go, you're completely overthinking.
This
and
is
I
100% true.
haven't even pressed record.
Yeah. So there's like a fine line, though, I find, between being like aware or being prepared and overthinking.
And spiraling like Tom and I do.
I don't know if that's at 18 scenarios or 20, or maybe it's at 6. I don't know where it is, but there's a fine line between being prepared ahead of time and overthinking.
Absolutely.
And the overthinking part becomes where it's paralyzing, where it's a paralysis through analysis. We in my job, that's what we have.
Right.
A paralysis by analysis. What happens is we think about an idea so many times and we have every scenario figured out and every this way and what if we do this and that way, that we end up doing nothing. And that's really the problem, because then inaction happens, and then the same patterns or the same things, that the problem you're trying to solve in the first place, nothing happens with it because you're too afraid to make the wrong decision.
Well, you have too many scenarios now, so you don't know which one to choose because you don't know how it's going to play out, so you've paralyzed yourself.
Like, how many times have you been, and this is because I'm a fat guy. You have to.
You're not a fat guy. Don't body shame yourself.
If
put the donut down. Put the donut down.
Write that down. That's another episode idea. Have you gone to Stewart's? And here locally, Stewart's is like an ice cream shop primarily. They have gas and coffee and stuff like that, but they're primarily known for their ice cream shops, right? You stand in front of that board that they have at the dip counter, and they've got 28, 36, 29. I don't know how many flavors they have, but it's a bunch. It's more than 3.
Mm-hmm.
It's ice cream. You can't make a wrong decision here.
Yeah, I don't overthink ice cream, so I'm not feeling you on that. I just go with, I like 6 of them. Can you mix them together?
I do that every time, though.
You do,
I'm
yeah.
like, you know what? I've never had the maple chocolate banana crunch.
Ooh,
I've never had that one before. I should try that. Yeah, but what if it's awful? Nah, you know what? No.
Do they do tastings like that?
They do tastings,
Okay.
but then it's even worse because now you're
Right.
like, oh, it is good, but so
Oh.
is that other one, and so is this other. Just pick one.
So what you're saying really is overthinking doesn't just happen in the big scenarios of our life, but also in the little ones, which causes just paralysis all around. I mean, if you cannot even get ice cream
Exactly.
without, rethink to rethink your decision 4 times.
It's death by 1,000 paper cuts. That's what it is. It builds up. It does, because it overtakes your life, and even simple decisions like that. And then what do I end up doing? I always get the chocolate chip cookie dough, because of course it's the best. But
it's also the safest.
it's also the safest, exactly. And I never venture outside of that to get something different.
You don't take the risk because you've now identified 48 different risks that could happen if you don't go with the safe guy.
But I know that if I go with the safe one, I'm not going to be dissatisfied. I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be okay.
Yeah. And
I
do we
don't know
want to live being okay? No, we want to live being fantastic. You should have had the maple syrup bacon banana crunch.
There were pecans in there, I think, somewhere along the line. But that's what I mean. I do that at sandwich shops too. There's 85 different options at a sandwich. Roast beef, lettuce, mayo, onions. Every time I can recite it verbatim because that's the only thing I ever order when I go to a sandwich shop.
I'm going to bring you like a chicken cutlet or something.
Don't, please.
So I think with overthinking.
So obviously that's in a fun way that we're talking about overthinking, but this gets into like relationships too.
It does. And
it's
I think
a really debilitating thing.
I think the problem is when you're overthinking, you feel that you're doing something, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what you're really doing is you're on this loop, right? And you're creating this short-term sense of what you think is like control.
Mm-hmm.
But really, you've now created all these scenarios which have completely led you out of control. And it's simple things. Like you said, like I just, I do it as a leader. So this entire podcast, which is called Exhausted Sparrows Unite. Some people, listening around the world, so cool. We had an Argentina listener.
Get out of here, really?
Like last week there was somebody in Argentina. And people are like, I don't even know what this means. So I have a charity here in the Hudson Valley, which is located in the beautiful state of New York. Tom's kind of smiling. I know there's plenty of thoughts on whether it's a beautiful state or not, but we feed people that have a cancer diagnosis. Mm-hmm. And in the middle of doing all of this, I have a staff of 3 others, and I'm just exhausted, right? Like my husband's like, did you shower today? I'm like, I have no idea. I can't even keep it together. So I kind of thought I can barely keep my head above water, right? Trying to be a mom, trying to be a boss, trying to feed people that are sick, have a nonprofit, raise money, all this stuff. I'm exhausted. And I said, I am not the only one that's exhausted. And I want people to see the vulnerable me, which is why we have this podcast. But one of the things that I had to learn is how to be a leader in the nonprofit world, something I'm not comfortable with. Tom and I have been on radio stations all our life. And when I say all our life, I mean like 20 years. That's like half our life. I'm not trying to say our age. But, it's all this stuff, right, that I've got to do. And I'm like, people need to see the vulnerable me because people see, if you Google Sparrow's Nest of the Hudson Valley or Sparrow's Nest, people see like, ooh, you have it all together. It's a beautiful building and it's great food. And it is not that.
No.
So being a leader is something that does not come naturally to me because I am a people pleaser. Mm-hmm. So my whole ramble is that every single day I am fighting this overthinking because, right, I don't want my employees to feel that their opinion doesn't matter. but I will give something that, we are now going to open up on Sundays and we're going to start cooking. Okay, guys. And instead of just going, okay, guys, I'm like, and what do you think?
Yeah.
And then what do you think? And then now I've got 7 other opinions that now I want to make them happy. But deep down, I know that's not going to work, or it's not going to work for me, or this is not the vision that I had. And then I start overthinking and changing my entire vision.
Exactly. Yes. And in some ways, like even like if you're going to make a decision, you have to make it and you got to stick through it. Right. Overthinking, like you said, prevents you from even making a decision, or it can even prevent you from making the right decision.
Or a watered down
version
decision
of it, yes.
of your vision.
So there's an idiom that I'm going to give you. And going
Can't
forward,
wait.
you're going to hear idioms and stuff like this all the time because this is how I operate. So a camel is a horse designed by committee. Let me say that again. A camel is a horse designed by committee. So I come to you, Kristen, I say, hey, listen, I got an idea. I have an idea for this animal. It's called a horse. It's this majestic beast, very muscular, very lean. It runs really fast. It's really beautiful. Chicks dig it. The girls love them. I don't know why. Girls love horses for some reason, but it's this really great animal. Do you have any input on it? And then you give me some input, and then I ask someone else, and I give some input from them, and I get some input from this person, and from this person, this person. And what I end up with is all this amalgamation of other ideas that have turned this majestic beast into a camel, because someone suggested that maybe if it's in the desert, it should have bigger feet, and maybe like instead of like short hair, it should have longer hair to keep it warm, and then this thing, and maybe the tail is too long, so maybe thin the. So the idea is you get all these other ideas, and then you end up with something completely different, and not even remotely close to the same thing as what you originally had. So in some cases, your gut instinct is the best choice. That's the best way to go. Hey, listen, if the horse fails, that's on me. But here's my idea in its purest form. Let's go with it. And if it doesn't work, then we'll adjust. But if I don't get a chance to put that idea out in its fullest form, then I'm ending up with a camel.
Yeah.
Which is not at all what I wanted in the first place.
And here's the thing. I think piggybacking on that, that's what then leaves you bitter, right?
Yes.
You had this idea. You knew exactly what it needed to be. If you're a people pleaser or an overthinker, you're getting a lot of other opinions in it. It is no longer that. And then if it does not work, you're bitter, you're upset, you're mad because, I took what you told me to do and I did what you told me to do and it didn't work. And that also goes back to self-esteem issues.
Yeah.
And sometimes having to say with anything, going into a job interview, going into I know my worth, I know my value, I have this idea, I believe it can work, but you're not giving yourself the chance because you're watering it down with all these other things. So it leads to like this whole spiral effect that leads to leads to depression. My goodness, just from the horse that is now a camel.
Yes, exactly. And so one of the ways that you can, another way that this manifests as well in relationships, for example, we've all had this experience. What do you want to do for dinner tonight? Where do you want to go?
Oh gosh,
for dinner tonight,
the
babe?
dreaded dinner conversation. Yeah.
So, again, in this fake scenario, not that this has ever happened before, this is completely not based on any relationship that I'm in or ever at all.
Ever.
But one spouse says, hey, where would you like to go? And the other spouse trying to outthink the other spouse, like, what does the other spouse want to do? I don't want to say someplace that they don't want to go to. I want to be agreeable here. So the other spouse probably wants to go to, restaurant B, right? But I really want to go to A, but I don't want to tell them because what if they don't want to go to A? Then I'm like, now I'm being pushy.
Right.
And I don't want to be pushy because we had a conversation last week about being pushy and I don't want to be pushy anymore. So I'll just say B because I think that's what they're going to want.
Mm-hmm.
Now we go to the other spouse who's also overthinking and says, well, they're probably going to want to go to B. And I don't want to say A because I don't want to be pushy, because we had this conversation about being pushy last week and we're trying to be more 50-50, but so I don't really want to say exactly what I want, because if it's not what they want, then I look like the bad guy. Right.
Yeah.
So let's go to B. Oh, she said B too. Great. Excellent. So that's where she wanted to go. Let's both go to B.
When really,
meanwhile, they both just wanted to go to A. So they both settled when, if they were honest with each other, they just said, hey, listen, I don't know where you want to go. No offense taken, whatever.
Yeah.
I'd prefer A. I'm good for anything, but if it was my choice, I'd want to go to A. But I'm okay if we go to B. So if the other person says, well, I'd like to go to A as well. And you might find that. You might find that, the other person has the same thoughts as you do.
Right, because you're overthinking it and you're not being truthful with your thoughts, right?
You've overthought yourself.
You have. With anything and everything. I think that that's what you have to do. I try to, just do that in the role that I have here. If I feel something in the air, or because I will spiral out of control. I will be like, I feel like Beth doesn't like me today in this meeting. She's really snarky. So,
yeah, did you see how she put her cup down on the table?
Right. It's just some silly things.
Well, exactly, yes.
And so what I have realized is that mentally, that is not good for me. Something that silly, which is not silly at all to me, right, will trip me up and will have me for days over assessing, like, I don't know what I said to Beth in that meeting. I don't know so what I've really tried to do is immediately after the meeting, I've gone, hey, you good? You mad at me? So that she can stop my spiraling.
Exactly.
Like, and maybe she is mad at me. Maybe she's like, yeah, Krista, I don't like the fact that you wore those black leather pants in the meeting.
You didn't see the way I put my cup down? Right. It was an obvious sign that I was angry.
Whatever it is. But but then I can get that off my plate because I know how dangerous it is. We say that overthinking leads to anxiety.
Yeah.
And it also then leads to depression.
But why does it lead to anxiety?
Well, let's talk about that, Tom.
I think the reason it does is because it's the unknown. A lot of people are stressed out about things they don't know about, or they're not sure about, right?
Yeah.
The thing that's not known. So when you play out a scenario and it's like, hey, you can either go A or B. Okay, well, now I have two things and I don't know which one it is. When you play out a scenario and it could be one of 8 situations, right? Or one of 16 or 32 situations, that creates even more, because I've got to be prepared mentally and emotionally for all 32 of those scenarios.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what am I going to say if this happens? What am I going to say if that happens? What is she going to say if I say this to what she hasn't even said yet? So to your point, communicating and being in communication and having open and honest communication is a great way to stop overthinking, because then you don't have to worry about it.
Then
unless, of course, this is where we throw the wrench in gears, unless you're overthinking the overthinking and you go, well, yeah, she's just saying that but don't do that. Did I just blow up your brain with that?
Tom, I'm going to pretend you didn't even say that.
I didn't even say that. Nope. I'm openly communicating. That's not the scenario. I'm assuming, though, if you tell me something, if I come to you and say, hey, listen, are you mad at me? Is something going on? That you're going to be open and honest with me. And then that puts that to rest. You're 100% right.
But let's be honest. I absolutely fall into that trap as well. And I will say, well,
but that's what she wants me to
I'm
think.
the boss.
Yeah.
So is she really going to be honest with me? And she's really going to tell me what she thinks. And so there's a lot of that. But like you said, it's because you are playing out every single possible outcome, which you cannot do. You can't do it. You can't possibly find a solution for every outcome of every problem. My pastor last year did this really great sermon on overthinking and anxiety. And in it just really resonated with me because, he said, you are creating all of these scenarios in your head, and the possibility of any of them happening are 1 in a million.
Yes.
So you have created a million scenarios, and then I'm going to go outside because I want to go to Stewart's, and then I want to get this ice cream. And what if I get the wrong flavor that's going to make me have the stomach flu? Then I'm going to throw up. I'm going to end up in the hospital. My loved ones will never see me before I pass away. He said, you are creating scenarios that are honestly never going to happen, and you have robbed yourself of peace.
Yes. In that moment, in that very
And
moment.
that moment, though, is like weeks. It could be weeks because you're waiting for the outcome of, let's say, a decision. And he says, and then you get the decision, and maybe the decision isn't even what you want. And maybe you're going into this job interview and you didn't get the job. It's just that simple. I didn't get the job,
Yeah.
but you've robbed yourself of weeks and weeks of, I'm not adequate. I'm not, stop. You just didn't get the job. We have to stop all of this thinking, this self-esteem bashing that is leading us into such turmoil. And we have to get more into what's the worst case scenario? And that's not the worst case. Like we have to really in our heads, really, we have to get more logical. I'm really not going to get stomach poison from your maple syrup, crunchy walnut,
pecan. It's got pecans,
chocolate,
not walnuts.
banana crunch.
Yes.
And I'm not going to go to the hospital and I'm not going to die from it. Like that is just spiraling. And I think that made me feel a little better when he said that. Cause it was like, you're right. I rob myself all the time of peace.
So my wife, this was when our kids were very young still. They were probably 5-6 years old. And my oldest one, he missed a couple of days of school because he was sick or whatever. This happens when you're kids.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife was particularly stressed that week. And I asked her, I said, what's going on? What's happening? You're more stressed than you normally are as a mom. What's happening? And she confessed to me, I don't remember all the details of this specifically, but it was something to the effect of, well, he's missed this time at school, and so he's going to miss this math quiz. And because of the math quiz, he's probably not going to pass math which is not even remotely possible.
Sure.
But then because he's going to get stuck behind in the next grade. And then because he's in the next grade, he's going to be a year behind, and then he's not going to be able to graduate on time, and he's never getting to a good college.
It's a doomsday.
I'm like, holy crap. He's 6. He's got what?
Tom Morell being the voice of reason.
I know, right? At 6 years old, do you think he's not going to go to college? But we can joke about it now, but in the moment, that was really debilitating to her. She 100%. Was really afraid that was going to happen because she had all these scenarios built out, like he's not going to do this, and he's never going to find that, and what if this happens? We don't know if that's ever going to happen. And that's the thing. Like I said, going back to the unknown. There's a lot of things that we don't know. So that whole like living in the moment thing, that applies to this as well. I mean, there's a fine line between being prepared for a situation, like coming into the podcast here. I turned my own podcast that I listen to off for the 20-minute ride over here so that I can focus on, hey, here's the things that I want to say. Here's the bullet points that I want to cover. But I have to be flexible enough to fill in with whatever Krista wants to say as well, because it's both of us doing this. So I'm not overthinking, I'm preparing. Overthinking is that scenario where my kid misses a week of school because he's got pneumonia, and now he's not graduating college, and he's not going to have a good job, and he's going to end up living at home with us until he's 38. What?
Probably not happening.
Probably not happening. And, oh, by the way, now I'm thinking about all of this stuff that hasn't even happened yet, how he's never going to get married and we never have grandchildren, all these other things that build on top of this imaginary scenario that all create stress internally. And you can rationalize, like you said, if we just think logically about it, that's the hard part.
It is.
Is that this is a very emotional thing, and to just like throw out, hey, just think logically about it. That's really, really tough.
And I think we need to talk about that coming up. But I think you touched on something that I just want to reiterate. We are making light of this, but it is a deep, dark hole. And we're both aware of it, And I think in the middle of the situation, I don't do anywhere near as well as all this great stuff I'm saying on a microphone. I'm really in it, and I'm in it deep. And sometimes I'm in it for an hour, and sometimes I'm in it for 2 weeks. So it is a real thing. And we are not in any way negating the fact that as you're going through it, as your wife went through it, as I'm going through, poor Beth, she's going to be like, Krista, why am I getting all these phone calls? But whoever it is, being mad at you, it's a real thing for you. It really does have value. And we're not trying to devalue that at all. No. It's a lot, and it's debilitating.
Yeah. We're pointing out the less the less critical ones, the ones that we can find humor in.
Sure.
But there are ones like at work where for weeks I will have this innate feeling like, well, the boss hasn't talked to me in a couple weeks, or I haven't been invited to this meeting, or he hasn't mentioned anything to me about this, or he hasn't replied back to my email about that. What is he like? Why is he doing that? And is it because of this? Is it because of that thing? Is it because of the other thing? And that can be really, really tough, because then, that stress at work, you're having to work with other people. That stress affects the other people that you're working with as well.
100%.
And then not just that, but then you come home with these imaginary, and I say imaginary, I don't mean it like that, but imaginary in the sense that like these haven't manifested in reality yet. In my imagination, nobody listens to me at work. Everybody's mad at me at work. Nobody thinks I'm doing a good job.
You might be losing your job.
I'm on the cusp of losing my job. And then I go home, and now I have to deal with my wife and my children.
Who you love dearly.
Absolutely. With all of that, but with all of that baggage that they don't even know anything about, because none of it is reality. It's all in my head. And now imagine, this is the other part that overthinking does. Now I go home, and if I even remotely start to dive into that to just get it off my chest, that's a lot to dump on somebody.
And you're also causing a worry to something that really, as you said, hasn't manifested itself, right? You're saying I may lose my job. Now you've got your wife worried. And at the end of the day, it's just all this noise that also then prevents you from concentrating on things you need to at work, because this noise is more important than your self-esteem. If you're liked, if you're good enough, are you adequate enough, that it really prevents you from doing all these other things that you have to do, because it's always there. It dulls itself, but it's there.
Because now if I'm not liked at work, if I'm not good enough at work, if my boss at work doesn't like me, well, what about the other coaches that I coach baseball with? What about the guys that I work with trivia at? What about the people that I do podcasts with? What about, the friends of mine that I have? What maybe everything is not as it seems. Nothing is as it seems. All of this is a lie. And that's way overthinking.
It is, but that's what it does.
But that's exactly what it does. And again, it can be emotionally and mentally, physically even, just absolutely draining.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about breaking the cycle, because something for me that I found very interesting is somebody that really, I have attention deficit disorder. Nobody has ever diagnosed me with it.
Yeah, me
Tom,
too.
But I know that I have it. When I was young, medication was starting to come out. My mom never put me on anything. But the thing is, overthinking does not provide clarity. It actually creates mental clutter.
Yes.
I think that's really important, because then what happens is you have this inability to solve anything.
And reframing that, using that first when you realize, so being mindful of that, going, wait, hold on, Krista. I'm overthinking this. And I know logically that overthinking creates not a solution, it creates more problems that don't even exist yet. This isn't helping me. So now that's recognizing that, and then reframing that. And then it all goes into like being mindful of it as well. So one way that you can help is setting a time limit for the amount of time that you're going to spend thinking about this. I do this at work all the time. Just the other day at work, something came up at work, and a guy treated me like garbage for a minute. And I was like, what's going on with him? What did I do? Wait, did I do something? And then, right? And we start down that spiral. And I realized that I was feeling this anxiety, and I was talking to myself, and I'm going upstairs ready to get to my desk. And I'm like, okay, Tom, by the time we get to the desk, we're not thinking about this anymore, because it's meaningless. He's having a bad day. I'm not going to let that ruin my day. I can't overthink what he's got going on. When I get to the top of the stairs, whatever that time frame is, I'm done. I got to stop thinking about this, because I have to move on to the next thing. So if you set yourself a time limit, hey, listen, for the next 5 minutes, I'm allowed to overthink. But at the end of 5 minutes, I gotta lock that away and put that in a box and put it back on the shelf because I don't have time to deal with that, because the longer I deal with it, excuse me, the deeper that spiral gets.
So you need to learn how to interrupt that, right?
Yes, exactly.
Give yourself 5 minutes, and then you have to completely interrupt it. You have to bring yourself to the present. You have to say, this is enough. You have to disrupt that loop, which is what causes all this anxiety. And it's a tough thing to do, but sometimes you have to say, stop. You know, this is not helping me. I've had my 5 minutes. I'm done. I'm not revisiting it. And I'm not saying that's easy.
It's not. Oh, it's not easy. No.
But you know, I guess I use the analogy swinging back into the right tree.
Yes.
Right? Like you can stick in the tree that's, poor me, but then you've got to get back into the tree of life. You've got to get back into the tree of living in the moment and not overthinking things. So get out of it and regroup.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like taking a drive. Here's the road that I'm going to drive on. I can turn off left and right, but it's going to only delay where I want to get to at the end.
True.
Another way is, we talked about it before, is communicating openly. Hey, the minute you have that thought of like, okay, Beth put her cup down weird at the meeting, right? Going back to that analogy.
Poor Beth.
Look at how she put her cup down. Oh my God, she's probably mad at me. Hold on. Oh, or is she mad at me, or is she mad at somebody else? Immediately when that question pops in your head, go explore that. Go find out. Get that information. Communicate openly. And even if you are having that kind of that spiral, like what I was saying before about how it worked, now I'm thinking about all these other things. I go home, instead of thinking it as dumping on my wife, right, or my family. Talk to her about it. And oh, by the way, what is she going to do? She's going to help me through this. Tom, you know that's not the case.
Right.
You're amazing at your job, which I am. You're good. Which I have to tell myself.
Self-esteem issues he does not have. He does not have.
No, I do. That's why I have to tell myself these things. So, but she's gonna tell me, yeah, but he didn't say that. Yeah, but he didn't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she didn't mean that, right? I mean, look, you're reading a text. She's gonna try to reason it out with me.
Sure.
Where that's hard to do with yourself in your head.
It is.
So communicating openly is also about finding out the information. So you're releasing that uncertainty, but also releasing the stress of that and having someone go, Tom, it's going to be okay. Come back from the ledge. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
You're not going to lose your job. You're not going to this. That's not happening. The guys who you coach with, they love you, man. They're awesome. They're good guys. You don't have to, where are these thoughts coming from? And then that's when you can kind of back into it and you go, okay, that's where, because there's uncertainty here.
But when you talk about communication too, I think when you immediately communicate with the person that you're feeling something from, and they assure you like, oh, I didn't mean it that way. It also creates for them an awareness that you're sensitive to certain things, right? They redo their patterns, you redo yours. And if you work things out and you go to people immediately, you will notice too that maybe they stop having an edge to their voice when you talk about certain things. Or you will also notice that communication will help the two of you, and you will really start feeling a little bit better in different situations with people that may cause you angst. If you don't put it out there, they don't know what they're doing. I say that all the time here. Like, if you don't tell me that this bothers you, and it could be something silly that I would never think would bother you, but putting that cup down, if she slams her cup all the time, poor Beth.
Yeah.
Like Beth is going to be getting phone calls like, are you angry?
We need to confiscate her cups right away. Go to her office, get her cups, all of them.
Yeah, but I think that communication thing also helps you. You're clearing the air with somebody, but you're also saying to somebody like, this thing makes me feel this way.
Yeah.
If I know that, Tom, then I'm going to stop.
I avoid that, yeah.
I'm not going to bring the cup in the room. I'm going to be like, all right, I'm not going to even put the cup down. But not bringing the cup.
It also helps in the next scenario with someone maybe you don't know, where you don't have that opportunity to communicate with them openly, right? Where you can go, wait a minute, same thing happened last time with Beth and it was nothing. So it's probably nothing here too.
Yeah.
So the more often, like any of these things that we talk about that are the fixes, the helps, anything that we talk about here, the more often you do it, the easier it becomes.
Yeah. And then I think too, we can also do things like engage in other activities, right?
Oh, definitely. Yeah,
For
yeah.
me, I need to reset myself. I need to refocus myself. So getting involved in something different when I'm in a funky mood helps. And I may not want to get involved in anything. I may not want to get outside and go for a run. I may not want to just switch to another project. But sometimes to get you off of it, you've got to get yourself on something
You
else.
got to change the channel.
You do.
If you think about
100%.
it. Yeah. Another thing that we talked about too is focusing on the solutions. Like, hey, we've got this situation, this problem that's coming up. Yeah, I can war game it out and there's 85 different scenarios, but ultimately, what's the solution? So focus on the solution, not the what ifs. Here's the solution. Here's the problem. Here's the direct solution for that.
And that may be, like we were saying earlier, you have to take the noise of everybody else out of it. You have to really go with your gut sometimes and not ask for too many opinions, too many chefs in the kitchen.
Exactly. Limit the number of people that you ask for that, and limit that to people that you really have a deep understanding and trust with. Because, like you said, if there's too many chefs in the kitchen, the soup gets ruined.
Yeah. And I think lastly, but we say this in every podcast, there are people that really are suffering from this. It is a big deal. If you need to seek, medical attention for this, if you need to talk to a therapist, if you need to talk to a doctor, you absolutely should. I think that is where a lot of us fail ourselves by not just admitting that, we can't get out of this on our own. And there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. I have seen therapists before. I have talked to therapists before. I've done medication before. I don't think that there is anything wrong with going after something that is there to help you.
Absolutely. No, any tool to help you. If there's a tool that's available to help you and you don't take advantage of that, that's the real shame.
Yeah, it is.
It is, yeah.
I'd love to be in with you again today, Tom.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it again sometime.
Maybe we'll do it again next week.
Maybe next week, yeah. That's a good thing.
Overthinking is a little bit like quicksand. The more you fight it, the deeper you sink in. So breaking the cycle is hard, but I need you to know the most important thing is you are not alone. We all overthink. We all struggle. So this is about taking some time and working on things that you feel you need to. The next time that you catch yourself spiraling, remember that you are not your thoughts. You have the power to pause and reflect and reset. And if you don't take anything else out of today's podcast, I hope you take the fact that everybody goes through the same struggles you go through. No one else is any better than you are. So we've got a new Facebook page. Check it out. Exhausted Sparrows Unite. If you like the episode, share it with someone you love. We're on all the major broadcast stations and eventually YouTube. You're going to be able to find us there. So keep in mind that we don't want you to have mental clutter in your life. Get rid of it and be kind to yourself and each other.